In the corporate boardrooms of Japan's largest food companies, executives still speak in hushed tones about a terror that gripped the nation 4 decades ago. A faceless enemy who moved like smoke through the most secure facilities, leaving behind threats that read like poetry written in blood. The case files remain partially sealed, marked with classifications that suggest authorities discovered something far more disturbing than a simple extortion scheme. But before we start, subscribe to never miss another disturbing revelation. March 17th, 1984. The Ozaki Glico confectionery factory in Ibaraki, Osaka Prefecture, stood silent in the pre-dawn darkness. Security cameras swept empty corridors where the sweet scent of chocolate and caramel lingered from the previous day's production. At precisely 21 minutes past 9 that evening, company president Katsuhisa Ozaki had left his office, unaware that shadowy figures were already positioning themselves around his residence. The kidnapping itself defied conventional criminal methodology. No witnesses observed the abduction, despite occurring in a densely populated residential area. Ozaki's wife discovered only an overturned chair and a single black glove deliberately placed on the kitchen counter. The methodical precision suggested perpetrators with intimate knowledge of the family's routines, yet surveillance of the property had revealed no suspicious activity in the weeks prior. 3 days later, the first communication arrived at the Glico headquarters. The message, composed of characters cut from magazines and newspapers, bore the signature that would terrorize Japan for the next 18 months, the monster with 21 faces. The ransom demand was modest by corporate standards, but the accompanying photograph showed Ozaki bound and blindfolded in what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse. More disturbing were the precise floor plans of Glico facilities included with the letter, annotated with security details that should have been impossible for outsiders to obtain. The perpetrators demonstrated an almost supernatural ability to anticipate police movements. When authorities established checkpoints around suspected drop locations, the criminals seemed to vanish entirely, only to resurface with new demands and increasingly elaborate taunts. Their communications revealed intimate knowledge of ongoing investigation strategies, suggesting either remarkable intelligence-gathering capabilities or assistance from within law enforcement itself. On May 8th, Izaki was released unharmed near a railway station in Ibaraki. His account of the captivity raised more questions than answers. The kidnappers had worn theatrical masks throughout his imprisonment, never revealing their true faces. They spoke in whispers, making voice identification impossible. Most unnervingly, Izaki reported that his captors seemed to know details about his childhood, his business decisions, and even private conversations with his wife that no stranger should have possessed. The investigation team, led by Inspector Yamamoto of the Osaka Prefectural Police, initially assumed the case was closed. However, on June 10th, packages of Glico products began appearing on store shelves with warning labels attached. The messages, written in the same distinctive style as the ransom notes, claimed the candies had been laced with potassium cyanide. Laboratory analysis revealed the threats were genuine in 12 separate instances across 3 prefectures. The monster's campaign expanded beyond Glico with methodical precision. Morinaga Confectionery became the next target, followed by Fujiya, House Foods, and Marudai Ham. Each attack demonstrated escalating sophistication and an almost preternatural understanding of food distribution networks. The perpetrators seemed capable of infiltrating any facility, contaminating products at will, and distributing them through channels that bypassed every security measure. What disturbed investigators most was the pattern emerging from the contaminated products. When mapped geographically, the affected stores formed configurations that bore no resemblance to random distribution. The location seemed chosen according to some incomprehensible logic, as if the perpetrators were following a blueprint visible only to themselves. Cryptographers brought in to analyze the pattern found mathematical relationships that suggested advanced planning spanning months or possibly years. The communications from the monster became increasingly elaborate and unsettling. Letters arrived written in multiple languages, including obscure dialects that required linguistic experts to decipher. The messages contained references to historical events, philosophical concepts, and scientific theories that suggested the perpetrators possessed extraordinary educational backgrounds. Most disturbing were the personal details included about investigating officers, their families, and their private lives. Inspector Yamamoto's case notes, partially declassified in 2009, describe phenomena that challenged conventional understanding of criminal behavior. The monster seemed capable of predicting police strategies with uncanny accuracy. Surveillance operations were consistently compromised before they could be implemented. Safe houses were discovered and photographed by the perpetrators, with images sent to authorities as proof of their omnipresence. The investigation reached a turning point in August when forensic analysis of the ransom notes revealed an anomaly that defied explanation. Paper analysis showed that some messages had been written on that appeared to be decades old, despite containing references to recent events. Ink dating suggested certain portions of the letters had been composed years before the crimes began, as if the perpetrators had been planning their campaign since the 1970s. On September 11th, the monster struck at the heart of Japan's food distribution system. Contaminated products appeared simultaneously in stores across 7 prefectures, a logistical feat that would have required coordination between dozens of individuals. The scale of the operation suggested resources and organizational capabilities far beyond those of conventional criminal enterprises. Intelligence analysts began investigating possible connections to industrial espionage or foreign intelligence services. The perpetrators' knowledge of their targets extended beyond business operations to deeply personal information. Letters to executives contained references to childhood memories, family secrets, and private medical conditions that could only have been obtained through extensive surveillance or access to confidential records. The psychological impact on victims was devastating, creating a sense of violation that extended far beyond mere financial extortion. As autumn arrived, the monster's communications took on an increasingly philosophical tone. Messages quoted ancient texts, discussed the nature of identity and anonymity, and included complex mathematical formulas whose significance remained unclear. The signature itself seemed to evolve, with the number 21 appearing in increasingly elaborate contexts that suggested symbolic rather than literal meaning. The case took a tragic turn on December 10th when Inspector Yamamoto was found dead in his apartment, apparently from suicide. His final report, discovered beside his body, contained a single line, "They are not what they appear to be." The circumstances surrounding his death raised immediate suspicions. Colleagues reported that Yamamoto had been increasingly agitated in the weeks before his death, speaking of discoveries that he refused to document in official reports. Following Yamamoto's death, the investigation was transferred to a joint task force involving multiple agencies. The new team discovered that crucial evidence had disappeared from secured storage facilities. Witness statements had been altered, and surveillance footage from key locations had been systematically corrupted. The monster seemed capable of manipulating the investigation itself, leaving investigators to question whether their own departments had been compromised. The final communication from the monster arrived on March 12, 1985. The message, longer and more complex than any previous correspondence, claimed responsibility for 17 separate incidents across 8 prefectures. However, the letter also contained an admission that would haunt investigators for decades: "We are more than 21, and we are less than 1." The mathematical impossibility of the statement seemed to mock conventional understanding of identity and numbers. The Monsters campaign ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving behind a trail of contaminated products, terrified executives, and unanswered questions. The perpetrators vanished without trace, despite one of the most extensive manhunts in Japanese history. No arrests were ever made, and the case remains officially unsolved. The total cost to the food industry exceeded $400 million, but the psychological impact on Japanese society proved far more lasting. What do you think explains the Monsters' seemingly impossible knowledge of their victims' most private details and their ability to stay one step ahead of every police strategy? Subscribe to explore more cases where the line between criminal genius and something far more disturbing becomes terrifyingly unclear.